Hello, friends. Welcome in to Packet A Members Q&A. I'm your host, Andy Herman. Thanks so much for being here. I cannot tell you how great it is to be chatting with you today. It really is. I'm really excited about this one. Just felt like it's a good 1:30 p.m., middle of the day, fantastic, just distraction from a lot of different things. So excited about this one. Thank you so much again for being here. I see all the great questions already that I'm super pumped about. And I have a couple assignments for you. One, I want to make sure that my audio is working because it was being a little bit wonky before I came on. So if somebody could confirm that it is, I see all my levels are good, but just want to make sure. Number two, if there is a big Bucks trade during the course of our conversation over the next 29 minutes, one of you is required to alert me so I can know exactly what happened. So those are our ground rules for today. I'll keep an eye on it here. I think audio is working. Nobody said anything, so that's probably a good thing. We'll jump in right away. Jim Mitchell, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for the question. Are Green Bay fans being fair to Travis Glover? 16 snaps all year and had a bad game against a great defensive line. Now we are talking about O-line picks early in the draft. Could Green Bay have done better with O-line snaps last year? A couple of things that I will talk about in this specific question. The first thing is that I would say, no matter what happened with Travis Glover in those 16 snaps or however many it was that he played in that game, Travis Glover was not going, like, you're not going into the offseason basing anything off of Travis Glover, meaning his play in those 16 snaps was probably not going to change your mind one way or the other as to what you needed to do this offseason. Travis Glover, still a late round pick. I think they must like him enough if he was the guy ahead of everyone else, to get ahead of Jacob Monk, ahead of Kadeem Telfort. Obviously, Dillard wasn't active for that game. Not sure if that was fully due to injury or what that decision was. But the fact that he was that next guy up is telling that they like him. I think that's about as much of a vote of confidence slash sign that they like him that you would need. Anything above and beyond that was probably unrealistic. I think they recognized in general, and I think they probably knew for the most part, that their offensive line was 6 players deep. They had their 5 starters in Jordan Morgan. And then after that, things were going to get a little bit iffy / dicey against the wrong team. And specifically, when you're looking at it from a playoff standpoint against a very good Eagles defensive line, that's what we saw, right? We didn't see a very good performance there from Telfort or Glover. And I think it would have been the same if it was Jacob Monk and Andre Dillard, or anyone not named their top 6 offensive linemen. I think the other thing on top of it is Josh Myers' free agency plays a factor in this as well. So I think right now, as we are sitting here today, there's only 5 players that you are really looking at that you feel like you have some level of confidence in that are on the roster. Again, if they re-sign Myers, maybe that changes it a little bit, but you have Rasheed Walker, you have Zach Tom, you've got Sean Ryan, Elton Jenkins, and Jordan Morgan. To add on top of this is the fact that you have some free agents coming up in 2026. After this year, Sean Ryan, Zach Tom, Rasheed Walker, all unrestricted free agents. Elton Jenkins is not getting younger. So this was always going to be a year in which you were going to invest in some offensive linemen, likely in the draft, probably a little bit early on. I don't know it's going to be first round. I think it can be, but you could look at 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, any of those rounds, and it would be viable to get an offensive lineman. I almost expect them to get at least 2, if not 3 offensive linemen in this draft. And I think what you look at from a Travis Glover, Jacob Monk, Kadeem Telfort sort of standpoint, I should mention Dillard's a free agent as well, but from those 3, Donovan Jennings, you can throw in that conversation as well. You're probably looking at those guys as well as maybe some 6th, 7th undrafted free agents from this year's class that are competing for that 8th, 9th, 10th spot on the offensive line. But the truth of the matter is you've got 5. You need to add probably 2 pieces that can come in and really be legitimate good players for you in case of emergency or in case you need them, right? And you want to start developing towards that next wave of offensive linemen. So I don't think Travis Glover's 16 snaps really played too much of a factor here. And sorry, my computer's being weird there. I don't think it played too much of a factor. And I think it ultimately was going to be the same no matter what. Now, if he came in and tore it up and he played that entire game and completely dominated Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis or something like that, all right, maybe that would have been a different conversation. And then you probably would have felt like, oh, we've got another guy. That's awesome. But that did not happen. I don't think it changes the calculus all that much. As far as could we have done better with offensive line snaps this past year? I don't think so. I don't know that you ever would have wanted to take any of the guys out that you took out. They were already sort of cross-training Jordan Morgan, and unfortunately, he just got hurt. I don't think there was a time or a place where you felt like, ooh, let's get Kadeem Telford or Jacob Monk or Travis Glover or any of those guys in the game other than when they did. So I don't think there was anything there. But I think they go into this offseason probably looking for some more depth and competition along that offensive line. I think that's the right thing to do. Step Keith, thank you so much for the chat, and thank you for the super chat as well. Really appreciate that a ton. Do you think the Packers have a good enough team to scout draft talent? Doesn't seem like we hear much about them. Thanks for the great job you do, Andy. Do you think the Packers have a good enough team to scout draft talent? I'm assuming you mean, do they like have a good enough scouting team to draft like high-end talent? I'm going to give that a second, Step Keith. I'm not sure if you're still in the conversation or if you're here. I know you posted this at 7 a.m. this morning and might be listening to it later. If you're here, if you could clarify that, if I get to the end of the chats here and you're not asking it again, I'll assume I kind of know the crux of your question. But if you are here and want to clarify, that'd be great. I just want to make sure I'm answering your question the right way. Now that the season is almost over, I'm looking forward to all the great team building content coming soon. Keep up the great work, Andy. Go Pack Go. Mike McGee, really appreciate that a ton. It's one of my favorite parts of the year. Going through a lot of the free agents through this week, probably through Sunday. I'm going to try to get through, again, a few more of these. Chris Godwin, I'm probably going to break down. Levi Nwuzurike and Osa Odigizua is kind of the plan right now. I think I'm going to do a combined episode for both of them, but might have to do it separate. We'll see how much time I get. Who else do I got on my docket here? Let's see. Have it here somewhere. But anyway, there's a variety of different players that I kind of want to get to and break down that I think could be big free agent signings. Byron Murphy's another one. So Byron Murphy. So if I had to guess, probably Godwin tomorrow. So Godwin for Friday, and then potentially Byron Murphy for Saturday, and then Odigizua and Nwuzurike for Sunday. That's kind of what I'm looking at right now. But again, things could change. And then next week, I want to go through the four or five biggest needs, right? So probably one of those days, well, Justice will be on again next week, but probably one of those days is going to be breaking down, sort of the top offensive lineman that Green Bay could get. I'm going to do top interior defensive lineman, top edge rushers, or not even top, just ones that would make sense, corner, and then we'll do wide receiver as well. And then, just briefly touching on the ones that we went over already, and then kind of going over some maybe under the radar players. There's a day that I want to do under the radar draft picks, and then we'll kind of put it all together at some point as well of like, all right, we've kind of gone over now the key free agents that could be targeted. What's the perfect offseason plan for Green Bay? How could they go out and actually build this roster the way that they need to build it? So we'll go through all of that. And then, of course, we'll get into draft content. Ross is already doing a phenomenal job on the daily draft stuff if you're not checking that out already. But it's going to be a really fun offseason, really important offseason, and could not be more excited to break it all down. Andy, I am shocked JJ didn't mention O-line for upgrades. You must have faith in them. Do you think Monk will assume center? My assumption is Monk will not assume center. I think this is going to be, again, adding in some guys, and we'll see what they ultimately do if Josh Myers is back. But I think if they were to put together the offensive line today, assuming Myers is not there, Rasheed Walker at left tackle, Zach Tom at right tackle, and then you have Jordan Morgan at one of the guard positions. And then it comes down to where do you want Jenkins and where do you want Sean Ryan? I think there's a chance Ryan could be center and Jenkins stays at left guard. Morgan stays at goes to right guard. I think there's also a chance it could be Jenkins at center and then one of Morgan or Ryan at left guard and the other at right guard. So I think there's some options there. I think Monk will be in the conversation. And then I think it just depends on what they get in free agency in the draft and what their quote unquote best five is. And Monk could get there. I think he could be somebody that takes a jump in year two with a full offseason in the weight room and putting on my favorite offseason term, functional strength. We'll see if they can do it, but I think that's going to be up to Monk first, but he seemed to kind of fall out of favor through the course of the year. I don't think that there's probably going to be a Jacob Monk favorite for that position, but I think he could work his way into it and will potentially be part of a competition in camp. Do you think a second bye week in a 18-game schedule could improve the overall quality of the NFL through more opportunity for self-scout and increased availability of most talented players? I am shocked that this is something that they have not done already. There is zero downside in this. The NFL, in fact, gets to print an extra week of money. That to me is what's the most shocking about it. you get a full another week of TV revenue by adding an extra bye week, because every team isn't going to take one extra bye week on the same week, right? It's going to be sporadic again. So you're literally adding in another week of TV revenue, another Monday Night Football week, another Sunday Night Football week, another Thursday Night Football week. You're adding in that for nothing. It's like, I can't imagine the players are going to say no to an extra bye week. I don't know anyone who would be opposed to that. As a fan, I'm fine with, getting an extra week off for the players and maybe just watching some of the other teams and taking a little bit of a breather midway through the season. That doesn't bother me much. So in another week of football, that doesn't actually have to change how much the players are playing. I am always stunned that this has not happened yet. That to me is how they should get the extra week of football. I don't think they actually need the extra game, just the extra bye week in and of itself. I also think that there's things that, like I talked about on today's show, that you can bake in where if you're going to play a Thursday game, you have to either play the previous Thursday or you're going to have a bye week the week before it. Like, you can easily bake that in now with how this is set up. So I think there's a variety of different ways that you can make this work. And I think it is beneficial for everyone. As far as whether or not it improves the product in any real way, I don't think it hurts it. I don't think you're going to see anything like drastic, but maybe players stay a little bit healthier, get a little bit of that extra rest and relaxation through the season, which I think is ultra important. Just mentally and physically, it's a really long year. Getting that extra week off, I think, could be massively important. So I think it helps. It certainly doesn't hurt, but I cannot believe that this has not been done already. It doesn't make any sense. And it's probably one of those things where the NFL is using it as a negotiating tactic for something that they'll be like, oh yeah, we're going to add that 18th game, but we're going to give you an extra bye week. Look at what we're going to do for you. When actually the NFL benefits from it a ton as well. But we'll see. It makes all the sense of the world. Andy, do you know whether any Packers follow Pack-A-Day? I do not. I don't obviously talk to many Packers. And if I'm going to talk to them in a setting like that, my question is not going to be, hey, do you listen to Pack-A-Day? So I do not know that. I know I can tell sort of a Jace. There was a player last year. I won't name names here, but like you could tell, and maybe it was just following me on social media or whatever, but a player that I had been pretty high on. And, he came up and, out of kind of nowhere, gave me a fist bump and said, hey, really appreciate you, something in that regard. And you could tell that there was like just a respect level there of like, hey, I kind of know that you've been saying some positive things. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. What I will say about that, and there was another instance too, when I was like very first in the locker room, it was a safety. I can't remember his name at the moment. He's like a backup safety. That's going to bother me now. But the very first time I was in the locker room, just assuming that nobody in the hell knew who I was. And he just came up to me. He's like, hey, Andy, how's it going? I'm like, how the hell do you know who I am? So that was kind of cool too. So I know that players are in some capacity aware of me, know who I am. I don't like, what I will always say is I would actually prefer probably that they don't. And I would actually probably prefer that whatever I say, whether it's positive or negative, like, I just don't even live in that realm, whether it's me or any of the other ones. Like, keep your mind clear of all of it. This is in some ways a form of entertainment for fans and for, for us to get to talk Packers every day. And unfortunately, as a part of that, and it's the part that I like the least, you have to be critical of players. You have to say some things of like, hey, it's probably time to move on. Like, I can't do this without having some piece of that. If every single time I came on, it was just like, everyone's great. Everyone's awesome. They should extend everyone. Everyone's playing unbelievable football. It's just all play nice in the sandbox. I probably wouldn't be very good at what I do. It doesn't mean that I like doing it. Doesn't mean that I wouldn't prefer. And I try to be as positive as I can. But I unfortunately, it has to be that way. And I had a player once that I wrote an article. This was very early on when I was on, we're just writing for Cheesehead TV. And I wrote about this player and how I thought the Packers were using him incorrectly and how there was a better way to utilize him. And I wrote a big article on it. And the player got in my DMs. He's like, thank you so much. This is awesome. Like, this is exactly how I feel. And my initial gut reaction is like, dude, I know I feel this way, but like, you should probably trust your coaches. Like, I almost wanted to be like, yeah, I think this, but like, the coaches probably know. Like whatever they're asking you is probably what you should be doing. Like even don't listen to me, listen to them. That's probably the better avenue for you here. And then of course, like 6 weeks later, I had said something, or like I think it wasn't even anything negative. It was just I think he was maybe in my bottom 3 players for the week or something to that extent, and he blocked me. So it's just like that. That's the sort of like up and down of like I don't even want necessarily or need any of that. They should not care what I have to say, quite frankly. So I'm sure there's some that maybe are at least aware. I know that that's the case because I've experienced it, but it's not why I do it. If I were them, if they were asking me, I would say, don't even let it get into your mind space. You focus on what your coaches are saying, focus on what's going in. Don't let anyone outside factor into anything that you're thinking. It's not worth it. You just have to kind of have that separation. So there's probably most don't give a crap who I am, would be my guess, but yeah, to each their own. And that's just kind of my overall take on it. Also, could Josh Jacobs have had in mind the mentorship for the young wide receivers by an established number one like Devontae Adams? That's kind of how I took his comments, trying to actualize the potential. I think there's definitely a piece of that. I think there's probably just a piece of it that he maybe wants to play with Devontae Adams again too. So I think that's absolutely something that could be in consideration here. I just think that Josh was being real of like, hey, you know what we could use? Just somebody that's really already developed and already arrived and can sort of set the tone for everything as a playmaker on offense. I think to me that's what he was thinking. And I think he probably, he said multiple times, everyone's super talented in that room. Really, 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 really talented. Said everyone has the ability to be a true number one wide receiver. He was very complimentary of that group. I think he's just saying like, hey, if we get somebody that's already there, I think that's going to be a mentorship thing. I think it's going to help the offense. I think it's going to be good all around. Like that to me is what he was getting at. I don't think he was trying to offend anyone in any way, shape, or form. Of course, it's always going to probably end up that way. But I think he was just being like, yeah, I think this is going to benefit everyone, including guys like Jaden Reed, Romeo Doubs, Dontavian Wicks. I think, getting that guy in probably does have some benefit for their development and just for taking some of the pressure away from those guys. I think it absolutely could. Baby QB, just to go back to, did this. I meant to mention the first part, the fact that Josh Jacobs did not mention the O-line. I thought that was actually kind of a low-key takeaway. Now, maybe it wouldn't have been, maybe it's different if it's like the guys that are blocking for him, if he's going to, in some way feel like it would be throwing them under the bus. Maybe that's a step too far of like, yeah, we need 3 or 4 more guys along the offensive line. The blocking's not been great. Like that probably is not maybe something he could say, although I don't know if it would have changed his mind. Maybe he would have said it anyway. But it was telling that the players that directly affect him the most, the offensive linemen, the ones that are opening the holes for him, he did not say was a need, which is really the fourth one. Like we know pass rusher, we know wide receiver, we know corner. We knew those 3. The other one that I think most people would say is offensive line, depth and competition. And he didn't say that. So it was a little bit telling as well. Do you think Wicks dropped the phone? Well, no. Wicks was much better in the second half. I have all the belief in the world in Dontavian Wicks, all the belief. Boxby member for 3 months. Thanks so much for that. If 18 game seasons, will there be more roster spots? There should. I think 55 is probably, I don't think you need to add a ton. I don't think you necessarily want to get to a point where you are, getting to the point where you have specialists, right? So like you could theoretically bring in a, 7'7" field goal blocker at some point. And like, I don't think you want to get to that point. You want to have it so that there's, 50, close to 53, 48 guys active on game day. You don't want a bunch of just individual specialists on the roster. But I will say that I do think going to like 55 and maybe making it that, there's 49 players active on game day could make a lot of sense. I think they already have enough with 16 guys on the practice squad and with call-ups available and things like that. I think they've done a great job of that. But I think maybe upping it to 55 and 50 if they add a game would really make some sense. Andy, would you ever consider going to Radio Row for Super Bowl week to collab with the other folks that cover the Packers or even interview the players? It's been something that's been kind of on my mind this week. I don't know. It's not something that's on the forefront of like, oh, I wish I could do this. In fact, I think if there were things that I wish I could do around this time, I think the NFL Combine might even be a little bit more of an intrigue. Radio Row is certainly in that conversation. I don't think the Senior Bowl, though I would love to go. I think it's just a little bit too close to right after the season for me. I'll just say this. If it were up to me, I'd be at all of it. I'd be at every media availability, every Senior Bowl, every NFL league meeting, every Radio Row. I would be at everything that I could. I just have to kind of weigh out what makes the most sense. Obviously, anything that I'm traveling for is going to be on my own dime, which isn't the be all end all. It's not a nightmare scenario. And then the other thing too is just when I'm there, obviously I can create content, but then and Radio Row is one of those where actually I can, like, the whole point is to create content and then upload it. So it's a little bit different. If I'm going for like a game or things like that, it actually makes it harder to create content. Same thing with like if I'm going to, whether it's the draft or whether it's Combine, Senior Bowl, anytime that I'm traveling away from home, it's a lot easier to just kind of create content here. It's always something that's on my mind. It's not anything, again, that's at the forefront, but it's something that I would love to do it. I just have to kind of work out the logistics and thought process of it a little bit more. I've been hearing people say 2025 is the target year for a while because we'll have tons of money to spend, but now it sounds like we'll only have about 30 million. Is that more money than it sounds like? It is more money than it sounds like. You also have to remember, like, it's 30 million plus it's 30 million without much to do when it comes to signing your own free agents. You also have to remember, for example, all right, I just want to make sure my numbers are right here. And I'm not saying that Green Bay is necessarily going to view it this way, but just to kind of give you an idea, Xavier McKinney last year, on his first year of his deal, made $5 million. Or sorry, that was Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs made $5 million. Xavier McKinney made $7.8 million. So together they made about $13.1 million in the first year of their deal. They have 30 plus million available. Now they're going to need to have a practice squad. They're going to have a slush fund to get through the season. They're going to want some flexibility with it. I'm not saying they're going to go out and sign, 10 high priced free agents, to that their first year of their deal is going to be 3 years, 3 million, and then it explodes after that or anything like that. But just to give you an idea, McKinney and Jacobs, the first year of their contract combined was about 13 million. So I think that's probably what you're looking at this year is two sizable free agents, the likes of Josh Jacobs and Xavier McKinney last year. It could be one huge one. Could be two big ones. They could do three more mid-tier guys, or maybe one big one and two mid-tier guys. Like, it could be something like that. But it is actually a good chunk of money when you realize how contracts are structured and that they're going to probably make it so that first year isn't a super high number. They'll be able to add what they want to add. And here's the other thing that I will add on top of it. They're at a point now too where, like, future salary caps aren't really borrowed from yet. So if they do want to borrow, I'm not saying they should, but if they do want to borrow, like, they have the world's their oyster. Like, if they want to go out and add 3 big time free agents like Josh Jacobs is asking for, if they want to add Khalil Mack, Byron Murphy, and Devontae Adams, they could do that. They absolutely could do that. And now whether they should and how that would affect future, re-signings and things like that, that's a story for another day. But they have the free agent money to go out and really kind of get what they want in this free agent period. I'm really interested in both of the Eagles guys you broke down yesterday, leaning more toward Sweat, because we already have a bunch of interior 3 techs. Yeah, I was impressed with both. Two very different players in the fact that Sweat's been a guy I've liked since college. Very, very similar sort of Rashawn Gary trajectory, where it took him a couple of years to really get going, then hit his stride. I don't know that he ever maybe hit quite peak Rashawn Gary right before the ACL, but he was damn close. And he's been a really good player for a long time. A little bit more kind of rotational, not a guy that maybe you want playing 40, 50 snaps, or I should say 40. I just like 50, 60 snaps per game. But that's where all of Green Bay's edge rushers are at anyway. So that's not a deal breaker. I was very impressed with how well he played against the run. Wasn't expecting that. And he's got a lot of juice as a pass rusher. I came away far more impressed with Josh Sweat than I realized. He reminded me of somebody that would have been, because I think he was closer to like an 80 PFF guy. Like, I just watching him, I would have assumed that he was closer to the 88, 89 PFF guy. Like, he looked really good. I was really impressed with him. There are some lulls from time to time with him, but he's good against the run, really good pass rusher, a lot of juice, really good strength, variety of different moves. He's a fun player. I came away very impressed. Milton Williams was just kind of the bizarro A+ pass rusher, like D+, C-, D run defender. Just really struggled in run defense. Got a little bit better at times. I think there can be a good run defender there. The other thing that I would say is, like, maybe on rundowns, you could use him a little bit more as a, kind of defensive end in a 4-3 because he does have some versatility, and maybe you can get some rundowns out of him that way. And maybe it would be just a little bit better having him go against some of those tackles rather than the interior where he's getting double teamed and things like that. So maybe there could be a way to utilize him that way. But I do also agree with you in the fact that the defensive tackles you have on the team, Carl Brooks, Colby Wooden, and certainly Devontae Wyatt are more that 3 technique, and you kind of already have that. But that's not to say that on obvious passing downs, you can't put Devontae Wyatt and Milton Williams on the field at the same time in the interior. Okay, I saw Marcus Smart trade. Thought maybe it was going to be the Bucks, but it is to the Wizards, which is very interesting. Still no Bucks, huh? You got what? 5 minutes, Milwaukee. 5 minutes. So yeah, long story short, they're both very, very intriguing. I think you could get a lot out of both of them. Then it's going to be, money, how competitive is it to get both of those guys? Williams is 26, Sweat is 28. There's a little bit of a difference there, but I'd certainly be good with either of them. I came away impressed with both for sure. Anything in person scheduled for the draft? Not yet, Jay. I am working on it. It just did kind of hit me of like, all right, we're getting kind of close now. I kind of probably need to put something in stone here, but I'm going to work on it. My hope is that I'm going to do something Wednesday night in person, the night before the draft, just a tweet up, get together, something to that effect. And then on Saturday, maybe the night after the draft, I will potentially do something live as well. I think during the draft itself, I kind of need to be here to immediately break down the draft picks and doing everything that I do. But so I'm not sure during the draft I'm actually going to be down there in any real way. But I will say I do plan on getting something together at some point. So I will keep you guys all posted on that. I am going to be doing the couple things. I think Aaron Nagler is going to be doing something live. Oh, here we go. Kevin Porter Jr. to the Bucks for Marjan Beauchamp. Interesting. That's not the trade that I expected. I like that a lot, but definitely not one that I expected. So yeah, so I there's going to be something with Cheesehead TV the day before the draft on Wednesday, I believe. I will be doing that. And then I don't want to give away too much because I'm not sure what Aaron has out there already. Don't want to spoil anything. And then I thought there's one other thing. Oh, there's going to be a Timber Rattlers event the Thursday before that Aaron Nagler and I are both going to be at this year. So Nagler and I are both going to be doing the Timber Rattlers event talking draft. So that will be a really fun time as well. So I'll have more details on that coming up. How can we convince more of the Packers writers people to post on Blue Sky? Yeah, it's a tough one. I'll just say, sometimes the changeover is hard, right? I know for me, you've built up 80,000 followers on Twitter, and it's where kind of people know to go to get your stuff. And on Blue Sky, you just started off and you've got 5,000 to 6,000, people following you. And that's just a tough transition to make. And it's really tough to do two at the same time. Yeah, it almost feels lame, like posting on Twitter than posting on Blue Sky or posting on more, like it just gets complicated. I really like Blue Sky a lot. I think it's a great platform. And I think over time, maybe it transitions a little bit more that way. But I think the other thing too is like there was threads that started off and people were excited about it. And then it didn't, really take off at all. So I'm sure some people are also waiting to be like, all right, is Blue Sky actually going to be a thing? Is it going to have staying power? Or am I going to put a bunch of time, effort, and energy into transferring over and then it flops and nobody's even on it in a couple months? I think it's already shown staying power. So I think it's probably going to stay, but it's just I know I've talked to Nagler and a couple other people about this of like, it's just really tough when you've developed a following in one place to try to, pack up your things and go to another one. And it's really difficult to do two at the same time as well. But maybe at some point I'll get over there a little bit more. Why is everyone so mad at Josh for giving his opinion? I agreed with what he said. Yeah, I covered it in pretty great detail today. That I think it was fine. I don't have a major issue with it. I will say I talked about it on the radio show today, and my producer Tommy brought up a great point. Josh Jacobs saying it, I think feels a little bit more fine. But at the same token, this is a captain on the team, a locker room leader, and put it in a different context. What if Jordan Love said it? It probably wouldn't feel as okay to say, right? And I agree with him when he said that. It did kind of spark a little bit of a different connotation to me. And while this is definitely a different connotation, a different player, what if Jair Alexander said it? What if Jair Alexander went out and said, yeah, we need, this, and this, and we need a true number one wide receiver? that probably has a different connotation too. And maybe Josh is just the messenger that the Packers need. Like maybe that's what needed to be said and needed to be heard, and maybe he's the right guy to deliver it. It felt like it was kind of fine to deliver it that way, but overall, it is a little bit of a different connotation if it would have come from Jordan or if it would have come from like a Jair Alexander. But to me, my read on it was I didn't have any major issue with it. I think he was out there chatting ball, having fun, and I think it's going to be much ado about nothing in the long run. That's my take on it. What date do you think the first Green Bay re-signing cut restructure news happens? Oh man, that's an impossible thing to predict. It wouldn't stun me if Jair was the first one and that happened, somewhat soon. They could agree to a trade, but it could be too that they shop him around for a while. So yeah, I don't know of anyone that they're like really inching to like release right away. Jair would be the one. And again, they may want to shop him for a bit, and that could even go up until draft time that they shop him. It could also be something similar with like Aaron Jones last year, where they were going to keep Jones until they found a replacement. Then they found Jacobs, and then they cut Jones. So it could be something where they keep Jair up until the time where they sign up Byron Murphy or something like that. And then at that point, they ultimately pivot and then release him or trade him. So it could be anything. And I don't know exactly what that first move would be, but my guess is there's something prior to March 1st and they get something in February, but what that is or why, maybe it's McManus. McManus would be a great one. That'd be a great deal to get done. So I'll say McManus in February. They get a McManus deal done in February. That's probably the best answer I can give. I feel like it's probable that they like the guys they have and that they are trying to add one guy in the draft on the O-line and one Yosh Nijman type signing. Yeah, or Andre Dillard type signing. I think they're going to draft 2 or 3 linemen. I think one on day one, or one in the first 4 rounds. I'll put it that way. And then a couple flyers, whether that's 5th, 6th, 7th round. I think they take a couple flyers, but I bet they add 2 to 3 guys for sure, with one of them being in the top 4 rounds in the draft. And then also add a Dillard Nijman-esque signing, 1 year, $3 to $4 million, just as a little bit of a veteran ad, whether that's at guard, center, or tackle. That's kind of my guess going into the offseason, and then let the chips fall where they may once everyone's actually competing for that job. What's good, Andy? Right now, today, what's the number 1 player acquisition the Packers need to make before opening day 2025? Also interested to see if that changes as we move through the offseason. I've said pass rusher. I still think that's 1A. I think that changes your team in an appreciable way. And I'm really potentially excited about who they could add. I like Khalil Mack. I like Josh Sweat, Milton Williams. I'm really excited to look at Onwuzurike and Odighizuwa to see if they could be potential players there. I don't think it's going to be Myles Garrett. I don't think it's going to be Max Crosby, but sure, get in the conversations if it makes sense. I think there's a lot of players that they could add in that realm that I'd be pretty excited about. Byron Murphy, I haven't watched him yet. I really want to go and watch him, and that is on the docket for this week. That's another one that I kind of have earmarked a little bit as well, that I wouldn't mind in Green Bay. I think he would fit very well. But yeah, those are kind of the ones. And then, your usual wide receiver conversation. I am intrigued by Devontae Adams as well, but I'm going to say pass rusher, and then it's just kind of pick your flavor and what's the pricing of each of those. What do you think is more likely? Romeo gets an extension or Romeo moves on either in free agency or trade? I don't think either happens this year. Obviously, Romeo is still under contract for another year. And I think you know that by saying that, obviously, but just to kind of clarify it, I think Romeo moves on in free agency in 2026. That's my assumption. Don't think he gets an extension this year. Don't think they trade him this year, although it's not impossible. I think he plays out this year, then he goes in free agency somewhere else next year. That's what I think happens. Does anyone in chat think that Josh Jacobs was out of line, and which wide receiver gets upset and demands a trade first? I don't think he was out of line, although I understand the reasoning as to why. And again, I think this is just interpretation of it. I very much understand why people would feel that way. And like I said, when talking about it, if you're thinking of it and if Jordan Love said it or Jair Alexander said it, I would probably feel a whole heck of a lot different, which maybe should not be the case. So I get it. I understand it. And I don't think any wide receiver will demand a trade out of it. But I totally understand why people would maybe feel that way. It's also a different type of message than I think we're used to from a Packers standpoint. We usually don't see really anything like that. So yeah, I am interested, just trying to see again if Bucks made any other trades. Doesn't look like it. It's a very interesting final trade. Just Kevin Porter Jr. What's the damage here? Kevin Porter Jr., Marshawn. Oh, it's just Beauchamp for Porter straight up. Wow, what an interesting deal that is. But yeah, I don't find any major umbrage with it or offense, but I can understand. I don't think it's gonna. I think it's gonna be water under the bridge. Really do. Kuhn, love you, Andy, and hopefully you and John are cool. Would love to see him on the show. The plan is to get him on next week at some point for sure. Hav was awesome in year one. What he did was some pretty underwhelming performances. While that said, OCs will have a year of tape. Packers have to get better at D-line and corner. I do think adding some upgrades to the team will definitely make them better. I think it'll make Hafley better. But as much as, teams will have tape on Hafley, if he can get some of those pieces, will be able to do some different things. But also, the players will know the system better. Like half of the year was the guys just getting ingrained in the system. So the fact that they're going to know it much better, and the fact that look at the players who really played great in the defense last year: Xavier McKinney, Javon Bullard, to an extent, but Xavier McKinney, Evan Williams for sure, Edgerrin Cooper. I throw Bullard in there too. Those guys were born into this system. They were brought into this system for Jeff Hafley. All the players that sort of struggled were the ones that carried over from Barry to Hafley and had to make that change. I think those players are going to be better off in year two with a year in their under the system, a year under their belt. And then I also think you now have, whether it's via the draft, free agency, trade, the players that they do add on defense are once again going to be specifically targeted to play in this defense, which I think is going to be a huge benefit as well. So I think there's definitely some upgrades that they can make because of that. All right. Radio Row seems to attract more people who are trying to sell something and there to talk ball. I agree, but I think there's still ways to take advantage of that. Very much so. Very much think there's ways to take advantage of that. I knew what you meant, Matt. Thanks for the in-depth explanation. Really appreciate it. You are more than welcome, Will. Remind me, I do want to get back to Step Keats' question as well, if it doesn't look like he's here. So I'll try to get back to that as well. You probably haven't had the time to dive into prospects, but what's your thoughts on the Packers potentially going O-line in the first? Gray Zabel. Yeah, I've heard great things about Zabel. I saw some of the Senior Bowl cut-ups and obviously heard Ross talk about him. He tore it up. I think 23 is where they're going to have to get him. I don't think he's going to last to their second pick in the second round anymore. Maybe they could move back a little bit and still get him. But from what I've heard, fantastic. And I have no problem. I know people hate it, but I have no problem if they want to go O-line in round one. No problem with that whatsoever. Would you do a live stream during the first round? Yes, I'll be doing a live stream during the first round for sure. Not at the draft, but here, like I did last year. Definitely will be doing live streams day 1, 2, probably part of day 3. And then, again, probably some live events Wednesday night, Saturday night is my thought process. What if Xavier said the same as Jacobs about corners? I think it would have been sort of taken the same. Here's the big thing, and I talked about this today as well. I think if you change the wording slightly, if instead of defensive end, he said defensive end, DB, and wide receiver 1, right? Or a 1A wide receiver, whatever it was, proven wide receiver. I think if he just says, the 3 things that I think could be beneficial would be a playmaker, a DB, and a pass rusher. I think that has a totally different connotation. And I think we know that because nobody said anything about him being like, yeah, they need a DB. Everyone knows it's corner. Everyone probably knows that he means a top flight corner for this team, but he didn't say we need a 1A corner, right? That would have probably ruffled some Keyshawn Nixons and some Carrington Valentines and maybe some Jair Alexanders, right? He's like, no, we need a DB. Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Nobody's upset about that. Nobody was really upset about defensive end, I think, either. But even then, if you would have said pass rusher, it is a little bit more vague. Defensive tackle, defensive end, okay, everyone needs another pass rusher. Nobody has any issue with that. Everyone could use another pass rusher in the league, all 32 teams. All right, no big deal there. You would have said playmaker on offense. Yeah, we need one more playmaker, one more pass rusher, one more DB. I think that has a different connotation as well. Everyone would have known he probably meant wide receiver, right? Probably wasn't going to be tight end. Probably wasn't talking about running back. But I think it just has a little bit of a softer feel to it. But again, I don't think it's that big of a deal. I really, really don't. Maybe I'm wrong. It very well could be that there's maybe some ruffled feathers. And he's gonna have to mend some bridges. But even if that is the case, I think he'll do so. I don't think it's going to be anything where anyone's going to hold grudges here. He'll apologize if he needs to. It'll move on. I don't think it's going to have any deep-seated decay from within that is going to be caused from this. And he's right. He's absolutely right with what they need. Yes. She said, Joey, let's do it. Sharp and Holmgren in the Hall tonight would be awesome. Really, really cool. By the way, if that does happen, if both get in, you have to think that there's a really good chance that Green Bay gets in the Hall of Fame game as well. So not out of the realm of possibility. If they get 2 guys in, it would be, whatever. Packers Giants, I think maybe if Eli Manning is the guy and then you have Holmgren and Sterling Sharp, I could see a Packers Giants Hall of Fame game coming up. Did Mason retire as a Packer? Also, how often do former Packers players do so? Will Rodgers and Adams? I'm interested to see. I should have asked Mason this, if he's going to sign like the 1-day contract with Green Bay or how that's going to go. But I think in the NFL, don't all of your jerseys go in anyway? Don't you not officially retire as a one sort of player? I forget which one it is that you don't. I want to say that they do both of your jerseys hanging in there, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's the opposite, and maybe you do only get one. I don't know. Either way, like, it's one of those things that it's never, like, the Hall of Fame's never been anything that I really care about. It's very subjective. Some guys are in that shouldn't be. Other guys are not in that should be. I think it's cool. I'll be cheering for Sharp and Holmgren tonight. I think it's a huge honor, but it's also not one of those things that I spend a lot of time thinking about, if I'm being honest. Yeah, knew what you meant on the 1-day contracts for sure. Players to watch: Malcolm Kuntz, edge from the Raiders, has a connection to Jacobs, had a really good 2023, was hurt all last year, but could be a sneaky signing. I would agree, except I don't think he's going to be a sneaky signing. I know PFF still has him in the top 10 of potential free agents. He's coming off the ACL. I don't think it's impossible. I think he's going to get paid a ton still. I just don't know if it's going to be sneaky, so to speak. And it might not be sneaky enough where Green Bay is the one that ultimately gets him. But I do like the thought process, she said, Joey, and he's definitely somebody that I've thought about as well. Jeffrey likes it as well. Thanks for the content. Do you have any cool Packers memorabilia you've picked up over the years? I was gifted a Chester Markle signed football. I do. I have a bunch. I should go through it sometime. I have a bunch of cool stuff. I don't even know. I haven't looked at it in a while. I do have, allegedly, and I think it's actually true, I do have the flag that was at the stadium the day of the Ice Bowl, allegedly. But I actually believe the story, and my grandpa was one that was actually holding the goalposts up in the picture. And apparently he took the flag. So I actually have been meaning to talk to the Packers Hall of Fame. I don't know if they'd be able to verify it, but like, I don't need it. I've actually never even really taken it out and looked at it in any real way. But I actually want to talk to them and see if I can actually get that to them, because I don't need it. And maybe we can work out something where here's my deal for them. I will give you the flag to the Ice Bowl. I want to sit in the draft room on draft day with Goody and company. That's my deal. It's 0.0% chance, less than that, of that happening. But that's I want to be in the war room through the entirety of a draft. That's my deal. Packers, give you the Ice Bowl flag. I want to sit in and draft. I won't say anything. I won't report on anything. You can swear me to secrecy. You can take away my credential. You can put a $1 million retainer on it. If I ever say anything that happened in that room, I have to pay $1 million or something. I just want to be in there. I just think experiencing one of them would be amazing, even if I can't report a single thing on it, or like I have to, before I can talk about it, it has to have, 20 years have to pass or something. I'm fine with all of that. I just think it'd be the most cool experience in the world. What I'm saying is I'd rather sign Kuntz and another decent signing rather. Gotcha. Totally get that. She said, Joey. Let me get back to Step Keats here and try to answer this one. Do you think the Packers have a good enough team to scout draft talent? Doesn't seem like we hear much about them. Thanks for the great job, Andy. You do appreciate that. Step Keat a ton. I wish I knew a little bit more of what the question was here. I think that they have a good enough front office to scout top end talent. I think the answer is yes, but let's be crystal clear. They have to be way better at it. Getting the top tier players has not been their forte. And especially for a team that's willing to draft and develop and take some risks and take some chances and take guys that maybe aren't going to be good right now, but could be really great 2 to 3 years from now. The fact that they haven't really hit on some of those has been, I think, disappointing. Zach Tom, certainly really good offensive lineman. That's a big hit, especially for a day 3 pick. Jair was right. It's a huge high end pick in a hit. The first team All Pro. Unfortunately, just injuries and stuff have slowed him down a little bit. Rashawn Gary, I wouldn't say elite pick, but he was going to be a top 15 edge defender, top 10 edge defender, at least, right in that range, and was trending that way up until the point where, he wasn't. So I still think that was a good pick, but some issues surrounding it. But I think a lot of it's due to injuries. So yeah, I think they need to be better scouting top end talent. The only other way to read this is, do you think the Packers have a good enough team to scout draft talent? Yeah, I think that has to be the question, right? So, Stepkid, I apologize. Next time you're in, if I misinterpreted your question, let me know, and I'd be happy to answer it in a different way. If I'll read it from your super chat since you were nice enough to do that. My balls itch. If we trade for Myles Garrett, does McKinney have over 40 interceptions or 50 plus? Agree with Jacobs, but would have said the Packers need a veteran number one receiver to help develop younger receivers. Yeah, again, you could have said playmaker or a veteran wide receiver, right? Just bring in a veteran for that room. You could have probably softened it a couple different ways. It's probably just a coaching point, if nothing else, of like how to discuss that stuff in the future. But like, I'm not, I don't know. Personally, I'm not offended by it. Although I'm not a wide receiver in the wide receiver room. So that is maybe the different connotation there. Yes. And I think McKinney would have a huge impact on the defense. Just McKinney getting to the number of interceptions he had this year, again, is going to be a feat in and of itself. But adding a Myles Garrett would certainly do wonders for, I think, the back end of that defense. Seeking the Garrett trade while in the war room. All right. I'll do my best. All right, friends. I think that does it. I think I got to everyone. I do have to get out of here. I've got a call coming up at 2:30. And then going to be doing the live Bleacher Report show at 3. So if you want to ask more questions, come in at 3 o'clock in the live Bleacher Report chat. And I'll be there answering questions as well. And we'll see you guys there. Appreciate you a ton. Thank you so much for being members. You guys are the absolute best. I'll be back tomorrow, 3 p.m. for happy hour here on the YouTube channel. And again, 3 p.m. in just 45 minutes here over on Bleacher Report. I'll be doing another live chat. So feel free to check that out if you want. Till next time. And as always, go Pack Go. Love you guys.